Welcome back to Gold Shields, the best true crime from the mouths of the detectives and investigators who made the cases. Today we have an exceptional show. But before that, Tom, we have some friends we want to say hi to, don't we?
Absolutely. Can't forget our friends. Back in the day, when we first started this,
Hmm.
we had a really special guest and became very good friends with Dave Bray.
Right.
Dave Bray's one of the best patriots around
I'm
and a
sure.
national recording artist who has songs and lyrics that'll blow you away.
Hmm.
And I just spoke to Dave the other day. He's doing great. He's out on tour. I mean, the guy's constantly on tour. He doesn't stop.
Hmm.
So we want to give a shout out to him because he's a dear friend and just a true supporter of law enforcement and the military. And we just want everyone to go to his website, real simple, davebrayusa.com. Check his tour dates out, which are endless, his merchandise, his videos, and you will become an instant fan. Absolutely instant. He's a great guy, does it for the right reasons,
Hmm.
with his support of law enforcement and the military. And that's it. Just go check him out. It's real simple. DaveBrayUSA.com. You got to go check
Hmm.
him out.
Tremendous guy. Love his music, in addition to what he stands for. Another quick shout out we want to give is well, first of all, we want to ask for your prayers for the soul of Deputy Sheriff Ryan Klinkbrumer from the LA County Sheriff's Office, who was brutally assassinated this past week. Sheriff's Office made an arrest, and there's been a huge outpouring of support for the Sheriff's Office and for him since then. We pray for his family. He recently was just engaged. A terrible, terrible tragedy. Uh, and along those lines, being that it is in LA, LA needs to be turned around. There's a lot going on out there that's not right, and the DA out there is responsible for a good deal of it. Gascon is his name. He has to go. We're big fans of and friends with Jonathan Hatami, Hatami, who is a longstanding deputy DA out in LA County, who's running for DA of LA County. Jonathan Hatami. Check him out online, see what he stands for. He believes in the same things we do. He's same values we do. He's an exceptional, exceptional man for this role. And we know the change has to start somewhere, right, Tom?
Absolutely. And that was a no brainer. He was our first endorsement. We
Hmm.
endorsed him for LA County DA. He was our first YouTube show.
Right.
So we have a big connection with Jonathan. And like you said, Dan, it's just, he is so good. His message, his policies, what they're going to be, backing law enforcement and taking care of the citizens of LA.
Hmm.
Go to his website. It's jonathanhatami.com. Check him out. Big. Like you said, the change in this country has got to start somewhere,
Right.
and it's got to start there.
Right. LA County is America's most populated county, and it's in a state of disrepair right now. It needs the right person to run it. Jonathan Atami, if you want to learn more about him, you should check out the Netflix special series, "The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez." He was the prosecutor who not just held those responsible for directly killing that poor boy responsible, but he took the opportunity to look at who failed him within the system, and he prosecuted those individuals as well. This is a man who has courage and bravery and determination. He's a military veteran. Jonathan Hatami, we can't say enough about him. Tom, who
No
do we
doubt.
have today on the show?
Today, we're excited.
Hmm.
We go through these true crime cases, and one that popped up a couple of months ago that we wanted to look into is the Oklahoma City bombing from
Hmm.
1995. And we were lucky enough, fortunate enough to get our hands on the FBI bomb tech, Barry Black, who
Right.
will be joining us today talking about that horrific event, the investigation, and how it all unfolded. And we can't wait for it. So, right after this, we will have Barry Black with us. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
And just like that, we're back at Gold Shields. I'm Dan Murphy, along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. Today with our very special guest, Barry Black, retired FBI bomb tech. Welcome to Gold Shields, Barry.
Thank you, Dan. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Tom, you did a bunch of research, and we managed to get lucky enough to get introduced to Barry. And I'm just excited. I think our audience is going to love this.
Oh, yeah. It took a little bit to find him. It wasn't easy. A couple of clicks here and clicks here and hoping he was the right one because, we do these researches on these cases, and you'll go into a case to read about it, and there's 15 people listed as part of the case, and 9 of them never did anything with it. So you try to pick the ones out, and Barry was an integral part of the case we're going to talk about today, which was historic, unfortunately, and that was the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. And Barry, you played a big role in this. But before we get to that, we want to just get into Barry Black and your background and everything about you, buddy. So, how did it all start in Barry Black's world?
Well, I appreciate the time, Tom, Dan, to be with you. Uh, since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an FBI agent, and it's TV, movies. That growing up in Alabama, I had a baseball coach that was an agent, so he was a good role model. Stayed in touch with him through high school. Then he put me in touch with a recruiter, just to sort of get a real world sense of it. They told me you had to have that 4-year college degree, 3 years of work experience, and then about 6% of the applicants get in. So don't hold your breath, basically. Uh, so I started off in college in engineering, touch base with my old coach again. He told me, yeah, engineering is great, but we're hiring accountants and lawyers. And back then in the 80s, the FBI actually offered an accounting exam. So if you had an accounting degree and could pass that accounting test, they would waive that extra requirement of 3 years of work experience and you could get in quicker. So I changed my major, actually changed schools, went down to Tuscaloosa, got an accounting degree, sat for the FBI's accounting test, somehow squeaked by that, opened the door to the FBI agents exam, got through that, and surprised myself to be sworn in when I was 24.
Wow, very
That is
good.
young for an agent. That is young.
Yeah, went to Quantico, and back in the oil bust in the 80s, most of the accountants that were coming out of the academy were sent to Dallas, Houston, Oklahoma City, where oil is a big part of the world. And that's how I ended up in Oklahoma, working mostly bank fraud and bankruptcy fraud investigations.
So you go from there, bank fraud, etc. Interesting stuff. With an accounting background, of course, they want you for that forensic accounting type work. But how did you steer, or how did your career get steered towards the world of bombs?
Another odd twist. So one of those childhood kind of dreams. I actually not only wanted to be in the FBI, but I wanted to be a tactical sniper. So landed out here. We had a former Green Beret, was the SWAT team leader for the Oklahoma City division. My training agent, or what most police departments call the FTO, was a national competitive marksman. We all became good friends. They said, "Hey, why don't you come out? We'll shoot some." Got on the SWAT team, made it to sniper school. Thought, I'd sort of achieved my dream. Um, First big deployment was to Waco in '93. It was a 51-day deployment, which is unusual for law enforcement to have one that protracted. But at the end of the deployment, when after the fire on April 19th of '93, that's when I really got to know a man named Jim Norman. He was the bomb technician for the FBI in Oklahoma City. Uh, I asked him, we were in the compound while it was still burning there, and I said, "No, what do you guys do?" He said, "Well, we're FBI bomb technicians." Well, I didn't know we had those, so he told me about the program. It got me really interested in the program itself. Turns out the FBI certifies all the non-military bomb technicians in the country, and it's even a smaller group of people. But it sounded fascinating. I threw my name in the hat and got accepted to the Hazardous Devices School down at Redstone Arsenal in 1994. So that was the transition from accounting to sniper to bomb tech.
That's a big transition. But you know what? You know what's great, Barry? Listening to you, and we've had guests like this before, that you get to live a dream out. That doesn't happen too often these days. To have something growing up in your head and having the ability to do it, and the being fortunate enough to live out a dream. That doesn't happen too often. And when it does happen, you feel very fortunate. Dan and I were in the same boat, with wanting to do that and getting on where we wanted to. So it's a big deal when that happens. I want to back up just a little bit and to explain to some of the, a lot of people probably in the audience about Waco and what took place there and, being deployed there, what was going on and the reason for you being deployed there and the actual outcome which played out on live TV, which was heart stopping when it was going on. But just take us through what Waco was.
So, 1993. Actually, I just gotten married in February '93. My
Of
wife and
course,
I
that's how it always works.
Yeah.
we were getting settled in, unpacking from our honeymoon, and our phone rang. It was a hard line. This is '93. It was one of her bridesmaids that called and said, "Hey, are you guys okay?" Well, we had been out of the country, hadn't seen the news. We said, "Yeah, we're fine." Why? And she said, "Well, we saw some federal agents had been killed." So I turned on CNN, which was really the only news network at the time, saw what was available, which was all chaotic, like most of these big events. And as I was watching, my pager went off. If you're on a special team back in the days, the pager was the height of technology.
That's
So
right.
we got the SWAT page to rally, and we were going to go support our division in Waco. That we were one of the closest divisions. So my wife said, "Now, how does that work exactly? This whole SWAT call out thing." I said, we'll pack for 3 days. It'll probably be over before we hit the Red River, but 3-day tactical resolution is probably reasonable. Well, I was there for 51. In short, there was a group, some people call it a cult. In charge was a guy named David Koresh. Another federal agency had a legal, lawful warrant for their compound, and for him, they tried to execute that warrant. Turned into a big shootout. Some of the Davidians were killed. Some of the federal agents were killed. And at that point, the president and the attorney general, who were both new, as President Clinton and A.G. Reno, they said, "Wait a minute, everybody pause. FBI, you go down there and fix it." So that's how the FBI got involved in the Branch Davidian thing to start with. Our negotiators were there. Initially, it was local SWAT teams. As negotiations drug out, our hostage rescue team came down and ended up really the resolution was to introduce non-lethal chemical agents, tear gas, basically. And as that was being introduced, the Davidians set 3 fires nearly simultaneously inside that compound. And it was a huge kind of ramshackle wooden building. It was windy on the plains of Texas. The fire took off incredibly fast. And yeah, that's how that came to an end.
Terrible story, and the world watched it live on news. It was I'll never forget it. It was and it was also a rallying call in many ways. There have been many acts of terrorism and violence carried on to quote unquote honor the Branch Davidians. A sad day for America in many ways. It must have been terrible to be there for as long as it was a long standoff. They had food. They weren't going anywhere. They were entrenched.
Huge place, a lot of weapons. The approach itself, is a wide open plain. So our regular vehicles back in the '90s, we didn't have armor like we have now. Really, nobody did. So we borrowed some Bradley fighting vehicles from Fort Hood, which was nearby, just so we would have armor. There were 50 caliber rifles in there. It was quite a well fortified location.
So the post-incident investigation of that, you were there as a member of the SWAT response team, not a bomb tech yet, correct?
Right. Yeah, that's as our bomb techs went in to support DPS and the Texas Rangers in the post event processing. Is really when I got introduced to the FBI bomb technician program, and again, it's fascinating. Raised my hand, somehow made the cut, and ended up at Redstone at the Hazardous Devices School in '94. And actually, I graduated from what we call bomb school in April of '94, and a year and a week later is when the Murrah Building happened.
You know what I always wanted to I never had a bomb tech in front of me. And there's probably a lot of people out there who are gonna hear this and watch this. How do you learn? Like, what are you learning in bomb tech school? What's the process of the education that you have to have to be a bomb tech in the FBI? Like what's school like? What do you learn?
It's the caliber of training the FBI provides its personnel is first class, world class, and that's true at Quantico through firearms, tactical training, as well as explosives. But FBI agents who turn out to be bomb technicians go through the exact same school that the FBI trains all our state and local partners with. So everybody's trained the same, and it's really start to finish. They say soup to nuts. The whole thing: explosive theory, explosive logic, render safe theory, X-rays, how they work, how to use them. Yeah, it's a relatively complex and very thorough, back then, 6 weeks of training, and then that gets you enough where you won't hurt yourself. That we actually do demolition and render safe, but there's a steep learning curve, and I was fortunate to have Jim Norman, my buddy and mentor, here in the office to kind of take me under his wing, introduce me to the state and local technicians we work so closely with, and I had a great group of state and local techs to ride my career out with.
So it wasn't as easy as you see in the movies where it's like, okay, cut the yellow wire and we're good.
I was just going to say that.
I mean, they overly simplify it in movies and TVs, but the fact of the matter is that many of these devices are very complex.
Oh yeah, yeah, never the yellow wire. First thing, so never.
Oh, never cut the yellow. All right, no, write that down, Tom.
I'm right. I got it. Write it down.
No,
I haven't been to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Just to say, the technology has made things much, much more difficult. And in the 26 years I was an FBI bomb technician, uh, yeah, technological advancements, both on the render safe side and the devices we're trying to defeat, it's a cat and mouse game for sure.
and you're playing with fire, literally playing with fire.
One of the funniest ones with all that is if you remember Lethal Weapon 3 in the beginning of the movie when the car bomb is in the building and Riggs and Murtaugh and Riggs has got his little knife. He's like, I'm going to cut the red one. Why? Why not?
Sometimes you get lucky.
No, I have a feeling that the FBI doesn't play the probabilities of
The
cutting
hunch.
the red to see if it works. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that, and I've always respected the men and women who do that kind of work because it really does take not just a high level of specific knowledge. It takes experience, but it takes guts.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
you are literally putting yourself in harm's way. And bombs going off is not like a single round coming your direction. It's incredibly deadly stuff that you're working with. So thank you for that, for being willing to do that. So at this point in your career, you've been trained as a bomb technician with the FBI, and it's been about a little over a year since you graduated from the school. Probably some cases or some incidents under your belt, but then the big one happens. The Murrah Building in Oklahoma City in 1995. Tell us about that. I know this was probably life-changing for you as well as many other people.
Oh, absolutely, Dan. So, as you said, I've been out as a bomb technician for a year and a week. And in that intervening year, the FBI had started a new group called the Evidence Response Team, or ERT. Everybody now knows it as CSI. I wish we had come up with that acronym, but ours is called ERT. So we had gotten some post-blast training and sort of some of the basic forensic training in that year in between. And this was my first bombing case. I was at an Air Force base about 7 linear miles from downtown. I had a fugitive in a white collar case. I was still working white collar at the time. And myself and another SWAT operator were looking for this white collar fugitive. And we heard the detonation. It registered 3.2 on the Richter scale, like an earthquake. I mean, it was loud. Oklahoma is flat and windy. So I looked over back to the west, and there was already a large black cloud just starting to drift north over the downtown area. And even then, our best communication was a pager or the secure FBI radio network we had in our vehicles. Took a minute, pager went off, and basically, something has happened downtown. So, first we're hearing airplane crash or gas main explosion. 1995, nobody's thinking terrorism. There'd been the one attack in New York in '93, but that was not the initial impression for anybody. So this was all pretty new. I talked to our ASAC, the Assistant Special Agent in charge, and I remember him saying, "Go do whatever it is you do. You're the bomb tech and the ERT guy. Go do whatever it is you do." So I showed up on scene. It was about 9:30, and it's just absolute chaos. I was in New York after 9/11 and some other pretty big scenes, but this was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. Walking wounded, people clearly that had not survived, people trapped in the building, debris everywhere. Roughly 300 buildings had been damaged, cars had been, burning. It's pandemonium. It really is, and you just rely on your slim part of the puzzle. I'm no doctor, so I really couldn't help anybody beyond just very basic first aid. So my part was what we call a preliminary survey, just to try to find out what happened. Was it a plane crash? But as I was walking the perimeter, I was also inquiring about my wife. We had been married in '93. We met because she was a federal probation officer, and she parked her personal car in that building. The Federal Credit Union where we banked was in that building. Her office was across the street on the south side, but she was in the Murrah building frequently. So as I made the 360 around the building, I asked one of the court security officers if they had seen her, and he said, "Yep, I've seen her. She's fine," which freed me up a little bit to go ahead and get back to the mission at hand. Found out later he had not seen her, but he had just said that, which was fair enough. But she paged me back into my own voicemail at our office, which was at a different location, about 10:30. So it was about an hour and a half before I knew she was okay. She said that, in fact, she was all right. They had gone to their relocation station. She had driven out of the building at 9 o'clock. She drove right by the device, made it to the highway 2 minutes before it detonated. So, things are different when you know people. I've been to a number of these situations, and everybody is someone's child or mom or dad, and it's all tragic. But when you know these people, it's different. This is '95. You still got a paper paycheck, so every other Thursday I was in the Federal Credit Union, depositing my paycheck. All the young ladies that were tellers, they were all killed, and Oklahoma City is not a big place when it comes down to it. So everybody knew someone, but that was a very dark day.
Now, on top of the dark day, Barry, unfortunately, how to word this, when does it hit you of the knowledge or even remembering there's a daycare center in there?
So much happens. It's the initial few hours. That wasn't part of my thought process at first. There were so many people that you got to presume didn't make it. The scope and magnitude of the damage was really spectacular. There was a couple of buildings across the street that were effectively destroyed. I mean, this was huge. There was a YMCA where people lived across the street. The windows had been blown out of that. So the daycare was there. It's America's kids. I went around back to the little playground where their toys were. That was, if you've ever seen an overhead of the building, on the east side, there was a platform that was about 2 stories high. So from that vantage, I could see the crater, which early on in a situation like this, you want to document how things look because firefighters are doing their job, things are getting moved, they're spraying water on stuff. So I was with a trooper up on that second deck where the playground was, and yeah, it's hard to consider. Um, yeah, I could see people from there in the building that desperately wanted out. Good friend of mine was a local bomb technician. He was in the building as well. He was talking to a man that was trapped. He told the guy, "Hey, we're going to get a ladder, lay the ladder across this big chasm, and we'll come get you." Well, as he's telling this man that, more debris fell on the guy and killed him right in front of this officer. And the whole morning's full of stories like that. Yeah, it's difficult. Those are things he and I have talked about, and things you just don't unsee or forget.
So the first few hours of any such incident are chaos, a frantic search to get people out, get them medical assistance, remove bodies if there are bodies. These are the things that naturally happen when you respond to these things. But at some point, you get down to the nitty gritty of your specific training and assignment as a bomb technician. Tell us about that, what that was like.
Well, it's a great point. Clearly, there were wounded people. There were people that were trapped. Uh, Everybody showed up to help, and that it happened that way in New York as well. Um, One nurse self-deployed from a neighboring town entered the building without any PPE, got hit by falling debris, and she died. She was one of the casualties. There was one young lady trapped. She had lost her family. The only way to extricate her, a surgeon came and amputated her leg with no anesthesia just to save her life. So
Wow.
all of that's happening while firemen are putting fires out, and we're trying to make some sense of the forensic footprint early on. So a lot of these things have to happen simultaneously, and everybody just has to do their part and presume the other professionals are doing their part and all moving in the same direction. But yeah, we can always recover evidence. The saving lives is primary.
Right.
I mean, even that was stalled when there was a second bomb threat later that morning.
We go through, and it's hard to explain to people who aren't in the profession that you get trained, but you don't get trained. You get trained for certain things, but no one gets trained for something like this. And I don't give a damn how tough you are, how badass you are, or whatever. When you're facing what you did, when we were down at ground zero, and you're looking at it, you're not trained for that. You're not, that's not supposed to happen. Yes, you're trained in certain things when it comes to law enforcement and bomb technicians, but not that. So the amount of discipline it takes, like for someone like you standing there to take a deep breath and just, all right, now I got to go to work. That's hard to do. That is not as easy as I just said it, but that's basically what you have to do.
Well, and it is difficult, but everybody's doing it. I didn't do anything special that day. I did my small part. First responders, urban search and rescue, firefighters, local law enforcement, everybody showed up to help. And that's really how McVeigh ended up in jail. A trooper was southbound to help and ended up being rerouted back to his patrol area, stumbled on McVeigh's car with no license and pulled him over. So, things do work out occasionally.
Yeah, that was an exceptional piece of, well, first of all, I've had a chance to meet that trooper, and he's the most unassuming person in the world. Why the fuss over me kind of thing. Um, but he did a very sharp piece of police work, which is sometimes the little things. License plate is missing, guy speeding away from an area. Something's wrong. Something just didn't feel right, right? He used his instincts. He pulled him over. Now, McVeigh had a weapon on him. He managed by himself to arrest and disarm a person, which, if the person doesn't want to be, could be really, really ugly. But I think McVeigh was playing the game. And so, but he did a great job, brought him in, and was being held, was being held on that weapons charge when it became clear that he had rented, was it a Ryder truck or something that was parked right in front? I mean, if I'm getting my facts wrong, please correct me. It's been a while, but how this fell in line, so to speak, it doesn't fall in line. It falls in line because of great work. Um, but how did you guys identify the truck? What did you find that helped, that put you onto the truck as being the cause or the source of the bombs?
So early that morning, things are still chaotic. A reserve deputy sheriff called me over and Jim Norman, the other FBI bomb technician, to what we call the differential housing, or the rear axle of a truck. It clearly exhibited blast damage. There are some telltale signs that it was very close to the seat of the blast. And he spit on his finger, wiped some grease away, and revealed a confidential vehicle identification number. Jim wrote it down. I wrote it down. We called it out to one another to make sure we'd gotten it correct. And Jim, we all had the little green federal notebooks we carried in our jump pocket, and Jim gave his to a runner, took it to the command post. They ran that CVI in, tied it to a Ford motor product. Nowadays, we have official relationships with all these industries, but we had friends within Ford. They said, "Yep, that's one of our trucks. We built it for a Ryder rental company." So we contacted Ryder Rental. They said, "Yep, that's one of our trucks. It belongs to a place called Elliott's Body Shop in Junction City, Kansas." So, the FBI being a national resource, we had people close. State and local partners were on board helping. Sent folks to Junction City to Elliott's Body Shop. Eldon Elliott said, "Yeah, the guy that rented that, his name is Robert Kling. Here's the paperwork." So we were looking, we had the name Kling then. Unlike the cases we see now where everybody's got cell phones and digital cameras, the best we could do was a sketch artist. So we sent a sketch artist up to get a composite sketch. And in the Mr. Elliott's memory, there were two people. Well, how do you get to two people? Well, there was a call to reserve the truck. A guy came in, paid cash for it. He said, "I'm Mr. Kling. I want to pick it up on Monday." So that Monday, Kling shows up. Eldon Elliott remembered a second guy that may or may not have been with him, but he was in the shop, he thought, that same day. So we ended up with sketches of John Doe number 1, John Doe number 2. Sometimes we call them unsub 1 and unknown subject 2. The media can help you. So we published those sketches, got over 15,000 leads from those sketches. And which ones do you follow? We got to follow them all, right? So we got a call from a guy in Buffalo that said, "I recognize John Doe 1. His name's Tim McVeigh. We were security officers together for a private security firm." So we kind of heard the name McVeigh there. So once we had these sketches, we saturated Junction City, hotels, motels, restaurants, whatever. And a lady named Leah McGowan at the Dreamland Motel recognized John Doe number 1 as well. She said he checked in, tore up the first registration slip, asked for a second one, rented room number 25 under the name of Tim McVeigh. So now we had heard McVeigh a couple of times. We had Robert Kling as the renter of the truck. Again, checking all the hotels, motels, restaurants around, we found that Mugu Gai Pan had been delivered from a Chinese restaurant to room number 25 in the name of Kling. Well, Leah McGowan had said there's only one guy in the room. So now we had Kling and McVeigh being the same person. So the night of April 20, the bomb went off 9:02 on the 19th. The night of April 20, we did an offline NCIC search for McVeigh. And we saw that Charlie Hanger, a highway patrol trooper, had arrested him about 90 miles north of town, about 90 minutes after the bombing, as you said, Dan, for failing to display a license plate and carrying a concealed weapon, which at that time was illegal in Oklahoma. He was about to bond out the county jail. So I had control of the air assets at the time, got a helicopter, myself, Jim Norman, and some other agents flew up to the highway. Troopers let us land there. I seized the car. Jim and the other guys went and took custody of McVeigh. So that was the 21st.
This is an incredibly quick response. Very, very sharp police agent work, call it police work on your part and your team's work, and everybody involved in this. It really is something that it's kind of a case study in how, in a crazy situation like this, treat everything as evidence, to treat everything real, run everything down, and we don't get lucky in police work. We create our own luck, right? That's by having good habits, by working hard, by communicating well with your partners and other agencies, and even within. And in this case, all of that just came together so quickly. Who knows where he would have disappeared to had he bonded out? But the timing was just fantastic. He couldn't have had more bad luck on his side than to have people like you chasing him. That's one of the biggest compliments we could ever give anybody who's a law enforcement investigator is I wouldn't want you investigating me, you know? And he had the bad luck of having Barry Black and others like him investigating him.
Well, I appreciate
So,
that. But, as I said, my part was I did my small part of it. There were, 1,400 people that worked
yeah.
840 days on just this case, and our state and local partners as well. But I appreciate the kind words, Dan.
Well, in typical professional spirit, you're humble. But yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, we just, how many guests have we had, Dan, that have the same attitude? And that's
Yeah,
that's because they're professionals.
exactly.
So what I'm curious at, who calls the state police that tells them, hey, guess who you have? And what was their, oh crap reaction to that?
It was late in the night of the 20th, or early in the morning of the 21st. Sorry about that. Somebody else will get that, I think. Yeah, so it was late the night of the 20th or early the 21st. We had a command post. It was still our first command post, which was in a nearly dilapidated building very close to the site, and made the call when we saw off that NCIC search that he had been arrested. And an agent with another organization called the county and said, "Is he still there?" We found out that the judge had been late, been detained, taking his kid to school or something along that. So
Wow.
he had not yet bonded
God.
out. So that guy put a federal hold on McVeigh so that he wouldn't be released, and was still obviously in jail when we flew up and took custody of him.
Wow.
So now the case doesn't end there. Go ahead, please.
No, that was just really the beginning. The initial response is one thing, right? What happens at the scene, and then there's a much larger investigative part. So we learned of an address in Decker, Michigan. It's the address he had given Leah McGowan at the Dreamland Motel, and also was associated with him at the time of his arrest. Our folks did research there and found that to be basically the farmhouse of James and Terry Nichols. Research into the Nichols, they were sort of anti-government type people, but most telling, Terry Nichols had served in the Army with a man named Tim McVeigh. So we already had Nichols as a person of interest, and he saw McVeigh's arrest on television and turned himself in about 3:00 that same day.
Oh wow. I didn't even remember that. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. 28 years ago, it's hard to remember all the details of it, but we know that he was part of the conspiracy. Were there any third parties, any unsubs, unidentifieds, or as far as we know, it was a limited to two-person conspiracy?
No, so there's a man named Michael Fortier. He too served with Nichols and McVeigh. McVeigh lived with Michael Fortier and his wife Lori out in Kingman, Arizona, on and off once McVeigh had left the military. And McVeigh wanted Fortier to assist him They actually did a recon of the building in the prior December. Lori Fortier helped McVeigh make the Robert Kling ID that was used to rent the Ryder truck. He had borrowed her typewriter, and she laminated that ID and recalled seeing his picture on the Kling ID. So they knew about it, and with a phone call could have stopped it, but they ultimately chose not to participate, but chose not to tell anybody. So at the end of the day, they were offered an agreement by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Michael Fortier was sentenced to, I believe, it was 12 years in prison uh, in return for his testimony. I think he served 10. But once they had lied to the interviewing agents about having prior knowledge and such as that, so once we were going to need them as witnesses, we had to kind of resuscitate their veracity a little bit. So um, one way that was done, again, 1995, no digital photography. This was all wet film. We took about 238,000 photographs during the course of this investigation. And we were looking for ways to corroborate Fortier's current, what we thought to be truthful statement. So one thing he said was on that reconnaissance trip back in December, McVeigh had showed him an alleyway behind the YMCA across the street and said that that was going to be his getaway route, that he wanted that big YMCA building to serve as kind of a blast shield in case the bomb went off and he wasn't far enough away. So Jim Norman went through the photographs and found a crime scene photo, an ERT photograph of a Ford key. Our protocols for crime scene photography are pretty extensive, so that's how you end up with 238,000 pictures. But he recognized this Ford key. We had well over 15,000 pieces of evidence in a warehouse using that paperwork, which organization is always key in a case like this. I went up to our evidence custodian. We recovered that key, and Jim and I took it down to Ford Motor and asked if they would reconstruct the ignition from the delivery vehicle, the vehicle that delivered the bomb, based on the VIN. So they reconstructed that ignition. We proved that was the key that had delivered the bomb, and our ERT record showed it was recovered in the alleyway behind the Y, right where Fortier said McVeigh was going to be.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. So McVeigh himself was sentenced to what? I know that Nichols was executed.
Actually, McVeigh was executed. That was
I got confused.
what was then the new weapons of mass destruction statute. They were tried separately. McVeigh was sentenced to death. Nichols was sentenced to life imprisonment. So he's in the Supermax facility where Ted Kaczynski spent his last days, and kind of a rogues gallery up there. But then the state of Oklahoma also charged him, Nichols, with murder. Murder is usually not a federal crime. So the only 8 deaths that were accounted for in the federal indictment were the 8 federal agents that died. So the state of Oklahoma charged for the Oklahomans that were killed. So in a state trial, I testified during some of the proceedings there regarding Nichols. He was convicted. So should he ever get out of the Supermax life sentence, the state of Oklahoma would get him then.
Yeah, I think there's very little chance of that.
Yeah. So let's put for the audience in perspective. You're the bomb tech. Tell us about the bomb and the weight and what the magnitude of it. Everyone sees the pictures. To do that much damage. Tell us about the bomb.
So HME, or homemade explosives, they run the gambit, right? So a very common type of homemade explosive is called ANFO. It's an acronym, ANFO. It stands for ammonium nitrate and fuel oil. It's a relatively easy explosive to make. Don't try it at home, but it's relatively easy to make. It's also made commercially. So you can buy commercial blasters, use it for mining, for example. Farmers use it to blow stumps and beaver dams, those kinds of things. But once we were aware of Terry Nichols, we executed a search warrant at his home in Kansas and found a receipt for 1 ton of ammonium nitrate. Well, that's a lot of fertilizer, right? So it was from Mid Kansas Co-op, a farm supply store up in Kansas. We sent agents out there. That receipt was in an alias of Mike Havens. Found another receipt for another ton, which was purchased. And the Mid Kansas Co-op people said, individuals usually don't buy 4,000 pounds of fertilizer, but they described him as Nichols, same kind of truck Nichols drove. We found fingerprints on the receipts of McVeigh or Nichols, so it was clear they were in possession of 4,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate. Well, the other half of the equation is you need some type of fuel oil. You need an oxidizer, which is ammonium nitrate, and you need fuel. Well, during the investigation, we documented their purchase of 3 barrels of nitromethane, which is race car fuel. They bought that down in Ennis, Texas, posing as motorcycle racers. So now you've got the fuel, you've got the fertilizer, you mix them together. It's still a very stable mixture. So it doesn't want to detonate very easily. So as a bomb technician, we realize you need what's called a booster, something to make it explosively detonate, kick it off, if you will. So explosives are tools, but they have to be stored a certain way. And if they're stolen, they have to be reported to another agency on an explosive theft report. So I went through all of the explosive theft reports and found almost 500 pounds of high explosive and blasting caps had been stolen from a quarry very close to Nichols' home. We sent agents up there, local police went with us, talked to the sheriff's department that investigated the original theft. He said that 4 of the 5 padlocks that secured the explosive magazine had been taken during the theft, but 1 was recovered on scene. We took that lock and matched it using metallurgy to the drill and drill bits we seized at Terry Nichols' house. So the drill and drill bit we took from Terry Nichols' home was the drill that was used to drill out the lock to access the explosives that boosted the ammonium nitrate.
The sophistication of the tools, and this is 1995. It's probably light years ahead of that now, but the sophistication of tools at law enforcement, specifically the FBI, they have, you guys know you have the best toys. Um, it's fascinating. People think they're going to get away with stuff. They have no idea the depth of expertise that exists within the ranks of law enforcement at the FBI level to catch you. It's just, if you do something bad enough and you draw the ire of the Federal Bureau of Investigation or any major law enforcement office at that, but the FBI has such a deep bench of knowledge and expertise. Good luck. I mean, if they really want to get you for something, you're got. That's it.
Yeah, the forensic part it's changed dramatically along with technology, but it can also be the simple things. Metallurgy is one thing, tool mark analysis, but we recovered the bomb was mixed at a place called Geary Lake. It's just a state park near Fort Riley, Kansas, where they were both stationed. And there was one tire track in the mud in the lake. We took a plaster cast of that tire track and were able to match that to Terry Nichols' truck tire to prove that it was his truck that was there, as witnesses had said. So, yeah, the forensic part matched with eyewitness testimony is pretty difficult to refute.
Wow. How'd they detonate it?
Burning time fuse is what we believe. There was a book called The Turner Diaries. It's a screed of hate-filled fiction, but it starts with a large vehicle-borne IED detonating outside of FBI headquarters, designed to kind of start a revolution. And in that book, it describes an ANFO-type bomb. And we believe it was detonated with 2 burning time fuses that were run through the cab of the vehicle. We have one surveillance image from an apartment complex about a block away that shows the Ryder truck. It was there for about 23 seconds. That's, we believe, when the fuses were lit. And then 2 minutes and 10 seconds later was detonation in front of the Murrah building. Relatively simple device.
One thing we haven't really touched on now, and it may be obvious to some, but the motivation. Every crime has a motivation. What was the ideology? What was the motivation behind this incredibly horrific terror attack?
We believe it was just hatred of the federal government. Um, you look back even before Waco was Ruby Ridge. We know that was an issue for McVeigh. McVeigh was at Waco a number of times. He was interviewed by a local journalist there. And beautiful thing about our country is you can say what you want to say. But he was interviewed. It was featured in the paper, and that article was actually used in trial. Um, when I recovered his car, for instance, there was an envelope full of documents, some quotes from the Turner Diaries, but basically, it was his motivation was a hatred for the government. He had told people he believed the FBI, the government particularly, had drawn first blood at Waco, and it was time to take action. Starting in '94, he began to tell people it was enough talk, time for action, and something big was going to happen that would start what he thought was going to be this revolution.
Wow. I mean, okay, so other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, did you enjoy the play, right? I mean, that's after a case like that, you stayed on the FBI and continued to do bomb tech work. Are there any other cases of note that you'd like to share with the audience that highlight any specific point of what that work is like?
Well,
Or was
that
that kind of the biggest thing you ever got involved in, or anybody got involved in, I guess?
well, obviously, it remains the largest act of domestic terrorism in history. I thought after Waco, uh, that was sort of the career type of thing. I worked. The major case name was Oak Bomb. Oklahoma City bombing was Oak Bomb. I worked Oak Bomb for over 2 years, and it was 14-hour days, 6-7 days a week. So my unit at headquarters, the SURG unit, they said, look, we still need national special security event support. You've been working that case pretty hard from inception. We know your folks are back down in Alabama. Why don't you come and work the Olympics? So I went to work the soccer venue for the '96 Olympics until the bomb went off at Centennial Park, and drove the 3 hours that night from Birmingham to Atlanta. Stayed in working the Atlanta part until the end of those games so that the local guys could work that bombing. Um, so, didn't see that coming. And, of course, 6 of us went to New York to support our state and local partners in the Bureau office after the 9/11 attacks, um, which was horrific. In my final case, I stayed in the Bureau a little longer than I intended. Another Oklahoman invoked McVeigh's name. He wanted to use a McVeigh style device to blow up a bank. Actually, he wanted to blow up the Federal Reserve, but then changed his mind and targeted a bank in downtown Oklahoma City in the shadow of the Murrah Building. So we did an undercover operation there, thwarted that attack, and I testified in his trial and was called back for sentencing, and that was the last case. So.
Well, it is needless to say you've had some career. Uh, a lot of times, if you get involved in one kind of big one, whatever that big one is, and that varies from wherever you work. But you've been on the front row of history of just three major historic events uh, that you were part of. And
Well,
God,
four. Count 9/11 makes
oh,
four, right?
9/11,
I
right?
mean,
Okay, four, right?
yeah.
Uh, wow, you hand it to you, man. That's a hell of a ride, and to be involved in that and do the work you do, and so good at it. You're a humble man, but you're gonna hear it. Too bad. Uh, you know the incredible work you do, and you know what that comes from. I think me when you grow up wanting to do something, and it's in your head of what you want to do, and then you get the opportunity to do it, you do it great. You just do. I mean, we've talked to so many people, Dan, and experiences that we've had. And when you have that in your blood and your DNA, when something big happens, you just do it. And you do it the best way you can because it's your life's dream. And, you were certainly an example of that, my friend.
Well, those are kind words, Tom. I appreciate it. As I said, everybody has a part to play, and it works best when everybody's rowing in the same direction.
That's right. So I have one request from you. Would it be possible for you to send me, if possible, your travel itinerary for the next couple of years? Because I want to be on the other side of the world from where you are, because you seem to find catastrophes, or they find you, I should say. But of course, I'm kidding with that. But you were where you should be and where you were supposed to be when our country needed it. So thank you for that.
It was my pleasure.
Yep,
My pleasure.
and the last thing I want to say, when Barry and I spoke a couple months ago to set this up, I had the privilege of having to go to Oklahoma City to be part of a case out there when I was in JTTF, and Barry and I know a couple of people in common that I had the privilege of working with in the Oklahoma City office. Great people, absolutely great people. But one of the memories of going there was going to the memorial, and that is a breathtaking memorial. I mean, how they did it, unfortunately, these days we have many memorials in this country, unfortunately. But that, I will say, is one of the most breathtaking, classiest, honorable memorials that are in this country. They did some job with the chairs, with the reflecting pool, all that. And if you are anywhere near Oklahoma City, go to that memorial and take a look at it. And the tree that
Right.
survived, which is a whole nother story
Yeah.
uh, with the tree. But if you're near Oklahoma City, that is one place that anyone should go.
No, it's a special place. They did a great job. While we've been talking, I've got a request to go give a presentation down there. We have a very close relationship with them. If you were there recently, you saw McVeigh's car, the original sketches of John Doe 1, John Doe 2. Those are things that the FBI has, we call it long-term loaned the museum there, because that story needs to be told.
Yes, it
Uh,
does.
and that survivor tree, that for the 20th anniversary, they gave me a sapling from that tree, and it's growing in my front yard now.
Oh, that's
Wow.
great. That
Yeah,
is
it's
Unbelievable.
great.
a special place.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend with us and to share with our audience your story of these incredible events. Um, you honor us by being on our show, Barry, and I can't wait to meet you in person and break bread with you, because you seem like a guy I just known all my life, and I respect you immensely, and thank you for what you've done for our country. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to meet both of you, and perhaps we'll see you next week in New York.
Yes. Sounds good. Dan, listen, we did it again. We
Unbelievable.
find these heroic people, and don't shake your head, Barry. Just take it. Uh, but we do, and their stories are compelling. And we look at our careers, we're like, what the hell did we do?
Yeah.
When you hear stories like this. So, uh, just to echo Dan, Barry, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and an amazing story of a heartbreaking case. But when you work hard and you have dedicated people like you out there, the results are good, and you get the bad guys, and that's the name of the game. So thank you so much for honoring us on Gold Shields. And Dan, like we always do, we pray for all our men and women in law enforcement, local, state, federal, all of them. They do a thankless job, and most of the time never ask for anything in return. They just do a job, and they protect a bunch of strangers. They're out there every day protecting strangers, responding to strangers' calls, and don't hesitate doing it. So everyone out there, pray for them. Give them a fist bump in the store, wave to them on the street, and when you see them, say thank you. The men and women in the military as well. Just slap them on the back, because that means everything to them. So once again, Barry Black, thank you so much. My partner, Dan Murphy. This is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. And everyone out there, please, youtube.com/@goldshields, rumble.com/goldshields. Check it out. Hit
Hit
that
subscribe.
subscribe button. Hit the bell. Be part of this great ride that we're on. So thank you so much again. And we will see everyone soon. And everyone stay safe.